Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for all finding the time to attend today's webinar of Section 230 and protecting your client's online reputation. Special thanks to Beverly Hills Bar Association for hosting this event. We appreciate it so much. My name is David Shea. I am the marketing manager here at NetReputation, and I'll be your moderator. A little bit about us. NetReputation is based in Sarasota, Florida. We've been in business for a little over than 7 years. We were named the world's leading reputation management company by Newsweek, featured on Inc. 500 fastest growing privately held companies for 2020 and 2021. We hope to do so in 2022. Holding a 4.9 star rating on Trustpilot and listed on Clutch for recognized for firms that do deliver. Here's a little picture about the team. It's a little outdated. Within the past year, in order to keep up with the digital landscape, the team has grown within the past year, consisting of reputation analysts, removal experts, and SEO specialists. Higher up on that ladder, we currently are joined by 3 of our members of the leadership team here: Meyer, who's our General Counsel and CCO, Bryan Powers, VP of Operations, and David McMahon, Director of Client Services. Today, they'll be addressing the negative impacts regarding Section 230, and such as defamation, damaging online publicity that thousands of people struggle with every year. Most importantly, how anyone can fight back and ultimately protect yourself from these online threats. Before we begin the presentation, feel free to ask any questions in the chat box, and we'll try to answer them as we go. With that said, Tommy, can you kick us off?
Good afternoon, Beverly Hills Bar Association. I never imagined I'd ever say that in my career, and I'm very excited to join you all here from Sarasota, Florida. Just a little bit about me. I graduated from the University of Miami in 1996. I've been practicing law for 25 years, and initially practiced law and doing employment law, representing employees. And then I also did a lot of defamation law. And as the internet grew from 1996 to now, I did a lot of defamation law that was the variety of being online and trying to get defamation issues off online. So I've got a lot of experience in this field. I've been at NetReputation for several years now as a general counsel. And as David said, we're up to 75 employees right now in Sarasota. We're well staffed and we're about ready to open up a Kansas City office very shortly in the next few months. So the topic we've got here today to discuss is Section 230 and protecting your client's online reputation. So most of you are probably saying, what the heck is a Section 230? Well, to understand first what that is, you have to go back a little bit. Back in my day and age, I'm 58 years old, and I was around back at the early stages of the internet back in 1990s. For those of you who've been around that long, you probably remember America Online, AOL. I used to sit around my computer, and every 1 hour or two, I'd get, "You got mail," and I'd get all excited. I got some email. Can you imagine if we still had that in 2021? We'd be throwing our computers out our windows if we had to listen to that every day. Then that's how much the internet has changed. So what happened in the early 1990s, when the internet was first just starting taking off, there were a number of major lawsuits against what we call now internet service providers. And internet service providers back then were CompuServe, Netscape, America Online. The initial Yahoo was out there too at that stage. The Yahoo was probably the biggest one prior to Google. And what happened to them was, the way you got to understand this is they're not publishers. They weren't writing material online. What they were doing was just being distributors of that material by other third parties. So the way I look at them, they were online libraries. They're just holding the stuff, the books, the online content that was being published by other people. However, in the early 1990s, they were getting sued. These internet service providers like Yahoo and CompuServe were getting sued because people were upset that they were distributing on their websites negative content about them or their companies or whoever they were. And so there were actually a number of lawsuits that these internet service providers lost. And they said this was going to stifle the internet if we had all this litigation. So at that time, a lot of lobbyists for these internet service providers marched up to Washington. They had a sympathetic ear in Congress. And Congress in 1996 passed the Communications Decency Act. The main thrust of that act was really to try and regulate pornography and child abuse online. But they also added this section, Section 230. Now, this is amazing. Most people have no clue what Section 230 is. And yet this is what the experts say about Section 230. Section 230 created the internet as we know it now. It actually consists of only 24 words. But because that law was passed in 1996, the internet exploded, all because of this section. And basically what this section does is two things. One, if you're an internet service provider, like Google, Yahoo, Twitter, Facebook, if you're providing, or websites too, it's longer than just internet service providers, it's also websites. If you're one of these entities and you're not writing the content on your websites, all you're doing is just storing that on your websites and just distributing it to the world online, then you're protected under the law. You can't be sued. You have immunity. And because of that immunity, these experts that are in this field said the internet absolutely exploded. And that's what happened in 1996. The second part of the law, which has really come into play recently with Donald Trump last year, the second part is those websites or those internet service providers, if they act in good faith, and if they want to take, let me just get the language correct here. Let me see if I have that here. If they want to try and take off or remove or restrict obscene, lewd, lascivious, filthy, excessively violent, harassing, or otherwise objectionable, whether or not such material is constitutionally protected, they can remove that kind of content. And they have immunity also. You can't sue them. So, and just recently with Section 230, and why it's become such a hot issue is because last year, Facebook and Twitter, during the presidential election and thereafter, were barring Donald Trump. They were taking his content off, claiming that he was violating these type of things on the internet. And as a result, there was a Defense Bill Act that came about in December, and Donald Trump vetoed that bill because he wanted the Congress to also add laws to either repeal or absolutely change Section 230. Congress he vetoed that law, but Congress wound up overturning his veto. I believe it was the only veto they overturned for Donald Trump, and the law still remains. That all being said, there is a tremendous amount of anger and also good faith belief on both sides of the political aisle, not just Republicans, but also Democrats, that Section 230, that after 20 years of having, or more than 25 years having this law, it's time to take a second look at this and maybe start tweaking it. And there's a lot of bills in Congress right now to do that. So with that all being said, that's Section 230. And how does that affect us? And how does that affect our clients? Well, obviously, go ahead, David, go to the next slide. Obviously, what's going on here is because 230 is protecting these websites that are not, again, they're not publishing content, they're just putting on third-party content, because they're protected. Our clients, or you and I for that matter, or the companies we work for, or other companies, are being tremendously affected with negative content online. Look at these stats here. This is amazing. 70% of employers didn't hire an applicant because of online content. I do it here at my company, here at as General Counsel. I will Google somebody before we hire them. And what I find, if I find negative content, you know, they're probably not going to have a job. This is happening across the country and across the world. Look at the next stat. 45% said they had found something in an online search that made them decide not to do business with someone. That's huge. One of the biggest areas and one of the most biggest deliverables we do is reviews, review management we do. If you want to go to a restaurant in Beverly Hills, you probably are pulling, and you've never been there, you're probably pulling up on your smartphone the reviews for that restaurant before you go there. And we do that with everything, whether you're choosing a lawyer, even lawyers now these days. The old school lawyers, they didn't care about what was out there. They had referrals. Well, guess what? It's changing. The newer crop of people that are coming looking for legal services now will Google your website at your law firm and find out what your star rating is. So it, like this stat just says, you know, half those people are making decisions based on what they see online. And the final one there, 88% of adults agree or strongly agree that it would be very difficult to remove inaccurate information about them online. And it's hard. It's hard. And that's why we're in business. David, next slide. So what happens to you here? You have negative content online because it's protected by Section 230. This is kind of like the dark side of the internet. And don't assume that everything that's online is true. I have to tell my young colleagues, just because it's on Google, it doesn't mean, I call it the Google machine. Just because it's on the Google machine, it doesn't mean it's true. Some of our best examples is this. You get arrested in Beverly Hills by a police officer. Your mugshot winds up on the internet, and you're arrested for they thought you had an outstanding warrant for child pornography. Your mugshot's going to say that you were arrested for an outstanding warrant for child pornography. Guess what? You're innocent. They dropped the charges. The state attorneys dropped the charges. They made a mistake. They pulled over the wrong person. But now your mugshot is online saying that you got arrested because of child pornography. Look what happened. Permanent damage to your professional career. Long-term social and personal embarrassment. Can you imagine carrying that around with you? When you Google your name in Beverly Hills, use that as your keywords, and you go to images, your mugshot pops up #1. And you were innocent. Nothing happened to you. #3, online publications circulating ill-informed and inaccurate information. And guess what? Some of these, there's people out there that scrape the mugshots from sheriff's departments and city police departments, and they republish it all over the country. David, next slide. So here's the threats. You got news publications that put out negative content about our clients. There's tons, millions of website forums that put out this negative content. And for that matter, anyone online can put out that negative content. And I think we all can agree now in 2021 that we know this is to be true. Next slide, David. So you got these laws. Besides Section 230, the First Amendment also protects newspaper publishers when they publish information, negative content. And now it's not. Back in the day when I was reading newspapers, you got the paper delivered to your home and you threw it away. Now all these newspapers have websites, and that information, that negative content, those old stories stay on forever. They never come down because they're protected by the First Amendment. Also, the Freedom of Information Act. The reason why those mugshots are flying around is because that information is available from government sheriff's departments and so forth. There's a Freedom of Information Act. Plus people can go out and get a Freedom of Information Act information about individuals and publish that online. All right, so next slide, David.
Tommy,
Yeah.
we have a question in regards to what you just said. Can Mr. Meyer represent a client that resides in New Jersey if there's difficulty obtaining local counsel? This pertains to slander, defamation, privacy violation, HIPAA records, breaches, government abuse from unlicensed government personnel, false nationwide alert leading to illegal flight, discrimination, rejection from flights, question mark.
Okay, I missed the beginning of that, David. I think is the question, can I personally represent them as the general counsel of the company for some client in New Jersey that is going through some defamation and slander issues? Is that?
I think it's a personal, overall question directed towards you. Yeah.
Yeah. Sure, if you want to pay me $100,000 retainer. No, I can't do that. I do represent clients across the country. I'm not able to practice law in New Jersey or for that matter, any other state than Florida. I'm only licensed in Florida. But what we do here at NetRep and what I do is I do have a network of attorneys across the country that will help us in these matters. And I sometimes I'll step in as a hoc vici attorney or something like that. But typically I always have to find somebody in that jurisdiction. Let's say it's New Jersey. I don't know the local rules. I need somebody that knows the local rules. I need someone that knows the judges. The jury pools we're dealing with are totally different than here in Southwest Florida. So, but I will lend my expertise and everything in matters like that. And, recently I've done cases in Arizona and also out in California. So yes, that's available to us.
Awesome. That was a great answer.
Okay, so as I was saying, you got all this negative content out there. The laws protect, and look, there are exceptions, but the laws overwhelmingly protect that negative content staying out there on the internet. So what do we do? How can we what can we do? And that's where we step in. David, next slide, please. So just kind of show you, I always believe that sometimes just lecturing and not showing doesn't really work well. I'm a big believer in stepping in and seeing examples. So here's an example right here of a client. His name is not the accurate name because we are concerned about keeping everything confidential. So this is a name of a client. We blurred out the key information here. But here we have this is a case study of an actual client. This is Calvin Smith, a former CPG executive. He was fired from his position for allegedly violating the company's harassment policy. And in a world of always online, his professional career suffered immensely. The media coverage of the story was intense. The top search results for his name were overwhelmed by negative publicity. And you can see over here on the right side of the screen, when you put in Calvin Smith in a Google search, this is what came up. And these red boxes are the negative content. This guy will never get another CEO position ever in his life. And for that matter, to kind of put it right in your own backyard there, Beverly Hills, presently we represent a pretty famous actor that has been accused of some really horrendous stuff. And he called us up because he cannot get another job doing another movie or another TV show or anything out in Hollywood. He's screwed because of what's on the internet about him. So here we are. This is Calvin Smith, and this is how he came to us when he came to us. Next slide, David. So what do? Bryan's our vice president. He's been with the company for 7 years, and Bryan's going to take it from here. Go ahead, Bryan.
Hi there. Thanks, Tommy. Let me just add on to what you were saying regarding mugshots. And a lot of people feel that, how could a mugshot still remain online if the person was actually innocent? And the way it works is, and their defense, these mugshot sites, is that they say it was a factual event that occurred in time. So regardless of the outcome of the case, they do not need to update the information. So they'll put it out there, innocent or not, it just stays out there. And even if the outcome, even if it's expunged in many of the states, they just don't need to remove it, and including newspapers. So newspapers don't need to remove content if they don't want to because of that Section 230. And another thing I wanted to kind of explain how Google works in a way that Google, the way I always explain it to people that aren't really familiar with the internet, is that they're like the librarian and they're not responsible for the content that's in the books. So if there's something in the book you don't like, well, then you're going to have to take it up with the publisher being the website. So we get calls from people that say all the time, oh, I just want it off, have Google remove the page. Well, Google doesn't do that. Google's a search engine, no different than those index cards when we were growing up. And you go to the librarian, you say, okay, I'm looking for, little blue kittens. Go to the index card, you look at it and you pull it out and it says, okay, it's over here. Now Google will give you a whole index of where that information is. That's the Google results. So if we can't remove the content, then we go into suppression. I handle the removal part here in the company. We have a whole department for that. When it comes to publishers, newspaper articles, what we do is we're pretty much the hub, I would say, for the majority of all the online reputation companies. We have probably over 1,000 contacts throughout the industry out there when it comes to publishers, being newspapers or anything like that, even mugshot sites as well. So when we have a client that wants to be removed from an article, the publisher is under no obligation whatsoever to remove the content. So what we do is we do reach out to them. If we don't know who they are, we reach out to our network of people that we know, and maybe they may know. And then vice versa, they reach out to us, and then we reach out to all the other people. So we're pretty much the largest hub of a company that can actually reach out to all those publishers out there. Now, when it comes to removal, there are some publishers that will remove content. Those are usually the smaller ones. If it's like a Newsweek or something, extremely difficult to remove content. But the smaller they are, the easier, I would say, to remove that information, especially local newspapers. They're more friendlier to it. There was one case that a few years back that we held out a client, and this is kind of like a little interesting story. And he was a 24-year-old Asian person with a very unique name. And I say unique name because you Google his name and it was the first thing that popped up, and it was all these news stories. And he met a girl on Tinder, met up with her it was in New York City at one of the bars, and they had a good time. They wound up hooking up, wound up going back to his place. They had sex. Everything fine with that. And then a couple of days later, they communicated. He sent an Uber to her. She wound up coming over his place. They had sex again. Great. A few days later, he gets a call from her and she says, hey, I need to tell you something. And he's like, what's going on? And she says, I'm 16 years old. And he basically freaked out and says, oh my God, I think this is illegal. We can't talk anymore, this and that. Well, it turns out that the police were on the other line. And they were listening because the parents saw the text messages and they wanted to arrest him for, I guess, child molestation. She was 16 years of age. So this wound up going before the judge, and the judge was actually very understanding. The girl probably looked a little bit older, and the client, well, he was such an awesome guy. And I remember him saying, he's like, all you Caucasian people all look the same. so I'm like, all right, I understand that. So he's like, man, I couldn't judge her age. I mean, she looked 24 years old. I mean, she said she was like 21, I think. And anyway, this wound up going before the judge. The judge threw out the case, but it was a juicy story. So the poor guy's name, and since it was a very unique name, it's the first thing that popped up when you Googled him. And so his attorney reached out to us at the time, and we reached out to all the papers, and all the papers except one actually wound up removing it. And so, and this was the case was dismissed. There was a no file. And we reached out to everyone, and that one site that didn't remove it, we wound up, and this is a little trick that you guys might want to use sometime. The publisher, we said, fine, look, how about you just change one of the letters in the guy's name? I forget what it was, but yeah, just change one, change the A to an O or something. And that was the agreement, and he wound up actually changing it. And now once you change one letter in the name, it's like changing a digit in a phone number. It's a completely different result. And so that's how we wound up resolving that for that particular client. So if we can't remove the content completely, then the next step would be to suppress the content. And that's where, actually we can switch slides there. Kind of went on a tangent there. Yeah, and when you conduct an online search, I don't know if people know this or are familiar with it, but if you put quotes next to the person's name, it creates it as if it's one word. And so if you're looking for John and the last name is Samagallo, and you have that space, then all information on John's are going to come up and all Samagallos. But if you put John Samagallo, then Google will look for that particular string exactly the way it is, and it will populate the search results, and that would pop up. And once you find that with your clients, if they call up and they see a negative article out there, it's a good way to put the quotes there, and you could even add an extra word there to create a filter, and that should pop up everything. Because usually when the clients call us up, they say, hey, I see this one article out there, but the truth is there's probably 10 of them that they're not seeing. And the moment that you remove one, it's like a whack-a-mole, the other one's going to wind up popping up and popping up. So the best way to do it when we can't remove all the content would be through suppression. You can change the slides. And yep, and once we determine which links that need to be removed, then we go into suppression. Is there any questions from anybody?
Yes, Brian, there's a question from Douglas S. I think I just lost it. What happens on removal sites like Ripoff Report? Are we able to remove content from those sites?
Ripoff Report is an interesting character. Yes, and actually, if I rewind a little bit, if you can change the letter in the name, but also the other thing that we can do is we can have a site de-index from Google. So meaning that if you reach out to the website, and if they want to keep the historical value, by having the story out there, but they don't want to delete the story, you can actually have them and ask them to de-index the story. So what happens is if someone has the direct link to it, or they do a search inside the search bar of the website, the story will pop up. But if you try going on Google, Google will remove it from its search results as well. I'm sorry, could you read that question back again?
Yes. What about removal of matters from websites like Ripoff Report?
Ripoff. Yeah, Ripoff Report doesn't remove anything. However, they will de-index for us. So again, meaning that if you do a search for that information, it will no longer appear in Google or Bing. But if the person goes into Ripoff Report, types in the company name or the person's name, it will show up. However, 99.999% of everybody will just go to Google or Bing. Bing and Yahoo is the same thing. They will not go to Ripoff Report and go into the search bar and type it in there unless they already know it exists out there and they need to find it. But Ripoff Report does not remove. However, we have a good relationship with them, that we are able to remove it from the internet.
Thank you, Brian.
And that goes also for, what's the other site that's famous in California, real popular? The dirty as well. We can remove from dirty. I know that's big out there for you guys. Any other questions?
Nope, those were the questions for your segment. Thank you.
Cool.
All right. Well, then it comes to suppression. If something cannot be removed, and it's stuck on page one, whether it's a site, a website, a news article, whatever it is, we've been working on suppression tactics for the last 5 years, and it comes to truly reputation management. And so that comes down to a mixture of building positive content through guest post blogs, press release outlets, optimizing social sites, some that you've heard of, some you've never heard of. A lot of people assume, reputation management is just social media management. That's just a small sliver of what we do. And same thing with review management. That's a small part, and some of those sites rank well. But at the end of the day, 94% of the search traffic is on Google, and 92% of people don't go past page one. And there's 10 spaces on Google, and we help push the negative link if it's in the first spot, second spot, however many. The Calvin Smith story here, we'll get back to that here in a second. We push them to page two and further down by building up positives. Google likes unique, fresh content. It also likes hearing about a keyword from multiple sources, and the more sources that are talking about something positively is how you get to outrank the negative. And so in addition to that, we'll tailor, for example, calvinsmith.com, .co, .org, some exact match domains to help us win that game of 10. And so if a case even gets dismissed or expunged, some news sites, like Bryan's saying, we'll remove. Others have done this to some clients of ours where they tell us they're going to remove it, and then maybe they'll just update it, and it actually takes this link from, we had a client who's in the Washington Post from 1998, and then it adds a new update to it in 2010. And so it gives it more relevancy in Google and makes it more difficult to push down. But really, it's a mixture of these strong assets with the other term you might hear often, search engine optimization or SEO. And that's what we do. We leverage SEO tactics that are designed for those folks that are selling blue jeans or light beer and competing for very competitive terms. And we attack the brand's name or the client and individual's name, leveraging the same high-tech, search engine results page analysis tools. Next slide, Dave. And along with that, we're obviously proactively monitoring, what mentions are going on out there, whether it's Google alerts or listening on all the different social media networks. I mean, there's so many of them. The big four, right? Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and Instagram. They mark up a large percentage of it, but then there's other niches that your clients may have issues in, whether it's people attacking them on Quora or on Yelp or on believe it or not, Reddit is a big one right now, especially with some of the cryptocurrencies we work with. Either you make it or break it in Reddit in that industry. Just getting the upvotes, downvotes, and it will rank well in Google. So there's ways to push it down in Google. Yelp obviously has been sued many times. A lot of headlines there, and I know Trustpilot was recently sued as well for one of those review sites. In some cases, we can help people engage real clients to leave them positive reviews to help that ranking. And then other scenarios, we have someone we've worked with that can help us, to Bryan's point, get them de-indexed from Google. Yelp doesn't like that. It's kind of a little trick we have, but it's one of those things that it dogs a lot of small business owners when people just use that platform to, for lack of a better term, shitpost on them, and it ranks well in Google. So we're monitoring those results, and as things change. We're coming up with solutions. No two things are always the same. Each case is unique, and what worked today doesn't always work tomorrow when it comes to SEO, and that's by design. Google loves to move the goalposts, but really it's that continual positive momentum of sending signals across multiple outlets that's going to really move the needle on Google. You can't just do a big one-time press dump, so to speak, to push things off. You used to be able to a couple of years ago, but it's much more complicated now. So the analogy I use there, it's like waves of the beach. You just got to keep hitting it with positive content at a set frequency, and pushing the positives up and moving the negatives down. Next slide. And so after about 7 months for Calvin, you know, we were able to leverage a few different outlets. You can see, and it's never the same, but you know, LinkedIn's one of those assets that once it's optimized properly, it'll always rank on page one. And AccessWire is a press release outlet. Muckrack, you know, being a social media site that most people never heard of. Same thing, you know, Medium's kind of a blogging site, but there's a mixture of outlets that can be leveraged to basically optimize for specific keywords. You know, each keyword you search into Google, you know, if you search my name, Dave McMahon, you'll find one set of data. But if you add the city I'm in, Sarasota, you're going to get a whole different data set. And the results usually will be a little more narrowed, and it's a little easier in that case. But sometimes with doctors, with lawyers, when there's, you know, basically titles associated, there's going to be unique data sets for someone, you know, Dr. Bob Smith or Bob Smith MD. And again, there's the certain negative content will rank differently on those pages. And another thing to consider is the geofence. You know, if the negative content in this case originated out of, you know, let's say example, it originated out of, you know, Miami, it's going to look the worst in Miami. It's going to look better everywhere else before it actually changes in that city. If that, you know, the Miami Herald was where it originated. But this case, you know, there's multiple negative news outlets that picked it up. And with time and persistence and consistent activity, and using some high leverage news outlets and then some high ranking social media assets to repost the content, and then clicks, engagement, and shares, we were able to game Google so that we cleared page one and got the negative articles on the run. And with these difficult cases, it's almost as if Google knows what happened. And when there was 9 out of the 10 were negative for this gentleman, you know, I'd say 6 or 7 flushed pretty quick, and then 2 or 3 from some high outlets kind of stuck after 3 months. And that 3 to 6 month range, we're really kind of whittled down to just one negative piece of content. And then it was just being collaborative with the client and finding new resources and new tools that we could use that we hadn't tried yet to push things down even further. And that's the other part of the equation, is that there's multiple different folks in this space that try suppression, but you got to be able to collaborate with someone because of all of the security settings. Ever since the Cambridge Analytica stuff, you can't make 15 Twitter accounts and 15 LinkedIns and Facebooks. You know, you need a unique cell phone number, and et cetera, to create some of these higher ranking profiles that once they get to page one, they'll stick so long as they're showing activity. And that's where we kind of take it over for the client and put it on cruise control. Same thing, you know, we want to build the positives, whether it's about their career, their personal interests, whatever. We've got writers that can write articles, PRs, blogs, guest posts, interviews, you know, whether it's 400 words to 2,000 words. We've got to provide some variety there. It can't all be the same thing over and over again. But you know, we're able to meet the needs of folks from all sorts of different industries, writing about what best represents what they're doing today. And if they don't have anything going on, we can always do refresher pieces talking about, you know, the positive time they were in, you know, the New York Times. I had a client that was in the New York Times in 2014 for a big case he won, and it got pushed away by him being, you know, on a Bravo show and causing some drama there. Well, you know, we did a refresher on that piece, sent it some backlinks and reposts, and it shot back up to page one pretty quick. So it's part of the equation there, is really to the start of the campaign, finding out what assets a client already has. You know, another example is a client ran for Congress in 2004 and 2006. There was an old .org in his name in the state, you know, talking about when he ran. We hit that with backlinks. It took it from page 10 of Google right to the middle of page one. So there's a lot of different ways to do what we do, but it really is getting in there and leveraging each client's strengths and finding new positive ways to show the right momentum to Google.
We have another audience question.
Sure.
What do you use to push positive content. You already discussed all the links like Muckrack, AccessWire. Maybe you can go into the videos and photos, or what kind of digital assets Google likes for that content to rank up.
Yeah, so it's a mixture of different press release outlets and or premium guest posts. So whether it's someone in the tech industry, for example, there's websites like Innovation in Tech Today, Tech Times, a lot of different industry specific sites that aren't truly press outlets that would pick up on the wire. We also use probably 6 different PR wires where it's run across the desks of Yahoo, Bloomberg, Forbes, et cetera, to get things picked up. But they are often very picky. And it has to be newsworthy for Bloomberg and Forbes, for example. Yahoo Finance will pretty much pick up any 90% of the cases, but you can't just keep posting on Yahoo Finance and expect to fill up 10 spots. But it is a mixture of different news outlets, some local, like for this example, EIN News. It often depends on which city you release an EIN release from, which local outlets will pick it up. And then, the national press release, there's the AP News that's as long as it's something that's newsworthy, we can put a piece of copy out there and optimize it. For example, when Channel 5 comes out to interview somebody, they're only going to use their name once or twice. If someone wrote a hit piece, there's a food bank we started working with. The hit piece was written on them. They said their name negatively 10 times, trying to keyword stuff it. Our content will be a mix. It'll be right at the right ratio between that 5 to 7% keyword ratio to try to game Google the best. So it isn't always written to be read, but more written to be read by Google. But it's not over the top where it's every other sentence is the keyword. But other outlets from that standpoint, the business wires, the global news wires, international wires, that's one item. And then there's a laundry list of different site specifics to any industry. We've got a group that works in green energy. There's probably 100 different sites that we could guest post blogs, and we've got relationships similar to what Bryan was saying, where for a certain fee they charge for a guest post. Right now what's really hot is obviously crypto. Like Cointelegraph is a big one, Block Telegraph's a big one. They have a set fee to post a piece of copy. Some of them are selective, some of them will take anything. We build up the content, we make sure it's pointed, with the proper backlinks at what we want it to be pointed at, whether it's their Twitter, their LinkedIn, their Pinterest, or some of the other news outlets that we've used already to show that activity. But it's a mixture. You can't put all your eggs in one basket of just PRs. But on top of that, yes, like we've got podcasts we can help leverage, specific industries. And for image clients, if it's say on a site like a mugshot that ends up, we had a client that was arrested on live PD a couple of years ago, and his image tab was 20, photos, different versions of his mugshot. The image tab is probably the most difficult thing to manipulate. We were able to water it down, so now it shows only 2 versions, but they're not in that preview bar in Google. It's only if you click into the image tab, but it is one of those. There's encyclopedia type websites. Wikipedia is its own niche in itself for edits and managing pages and noteworthy content where it's earned media, not paid media. But there's other wiki type sites that rank well for images and for suppression that are more biographical that can be leveraged. So it's a definite mixed bag, and each industry kind of has its own set of outlets, if that answers your question.
Sure does. We have another question from Nadia H. This one would be more entailed to Bryan. Before I ask this question, just want to let everyone know we only have 15 minutes left. So I would love to wrap this up within 10 minutes or so to dedicate some time for any extra questions. So Bryan, what do we do about fake Google reviews and Yelp reviews? It's from disgruntled employees, competitors, or unhappy clients.
When it comes to fake reviews, we have a whole team over here that we flag it, and we've created a pretty good relationship with a lot of the moderators. They're usually offshore in India. And we just keep on submitting until we get the ones that we know. And what's interesting is, like, we've sent out pizza, believe it or not. Pizza is a great tool. It works, believe it or not. You can send it to their office and they love it. They remember us. We've done that a lot throughout the United States and throughout other countries as well. So we flag it and we just look at the terms. We're really good at looking at all their terms of services. So for instance, if someone said, yeah, that fat guy, didn't, was horrible at delivering, my meal. Well, you just mentioned his weight, so we can have that actually removed. So there's a lot of key things that we can actually attack and have that removed. And we're pretty successful. I would say 50% of the time we can remove reviews. And let me just touch on a couple of things. I saw some people had some questions, like Jonathan actually mentioned regarding the deliberate typo. Jonathan, yes, the typo works. However, use that only as a last resort. So the primary thing that you always want to do is get that content removed off the site. If you can't, then what you can do is then just ask, hey, how about if you just change that one letter, so it doesn't ruin the person's life, but you can still keep your story. That works sometimes. However, the other thing is, a lot of these sites are offshore. So even if we have laws in this country that said you can't do this or that, if the servers are located in Panama, that's it. There's nothing that we can do. So we have to basically plead with the site or the suppression thing when it comes to removal. And then the other person, Orbit, how much is the cost? I believe you were referring to rip-off report or the dirty. Extremely expensive. It's a case-by-case basis, so you would have to send us the link. Then we submit it into the people that we know there, and then they'll give us a quote back. It could range anywhere from $1,000. And we had one guy was $60,000 the guy wanted. The rip-off report wanted. And we told him, I said, bro, $30,000. I'll give you 30,000. Just remove the damn thing. He said no. So he walked away from $60,000. The guy doesn't care. He's worth like $30 million. He's dying of cancer, but he doesn't care about the money. But that's on a case-by-case basis. So there is a lot of tools we have in our toolbox to remove content, but also suppress it as well. But when it comes to, for instance, the mugshots, we do organize with a lot of the other sites that remove from mugshots. They come to us, and then we negotiate on the removal from there. That's it.
Thank you. David, you can continue. Sorry for just addressing all these questions.
No, I was actually going to transition back to Tommy, but we can jump into Q&A. I mean, each case is unique, to Bryan's point. Yelp is particularly difficult, but often it's having the right person ask for the removal. Same thing with, obviously, Glassdoor's really difficult to get things removed, even if they're fake. Trustpilot is a little bit easier, but some of these sites make it difficult on purpose, even if it's pretty obvious it's fake. There's a set process to follow, and we know most small business owners don't have the time to go through all those steps. And there's a process specific to each site that we're able to follow for a high chance of success.
And believe it or not, excuse me, the really tough ones to remove are the ones that doesn't, excuse me, on the reviews, are the ones that just hit 1 star, but they don't mention anything. Those are difficult to remove, believe it or not. But all the others, depending on what was said in there and our relationship with the moderator, that, once we wind up, connecting with them, because it's all random. And once we see it's a moderator that we've dealt with before and we have a good relationship with them, then they usually do remove the negative review.
So where do we go from here? Tommy, can you take us home?
Sure. So if you need any help or anything, we are available. We're one of the top online reputation management firms, not only in the country, but also in the world. We have clients worldwide. We also have a London office that we do work in London. And, you know, we are one of the fastest growing companies in America. We've been in Inc. 5000 the last 3 or 4 years now. We'll be in the 4th year. We have all the assets, the expertise, and the knowledge to get the job done. One thing that makes us distinctly different than our competition, and some of our competitions out there in Silicon Valley, some are the initial leaders in this field. What they do is they kind of do a cookie cutter. So if you just saw that case study that we just did, they'll do the same thing every month. And guess what? After 6 months, 12 months, it doesn't work. Because as David just explained, his team has got to adjust constantly on a weekly, on a daily, weekly, and monthly basis to try and push down that negative content. I mean, the algorithms at Google are really, really smart. Okay, they get it. And we're constantly wrestling with that. So that's what makes us so different from our competition. We work hard to customize the best solution for each customer. You won't get that from the competition. So next slide there, David. So to get you started, you can make an inquiry to any of us. We're gonna at the end of this presentation, we'll leave you with our contact information. Bryan is available. This is another thing that you won't get in any other company. You're gonna get your CEO, Adam Vitrilli. You're gonna get the General Counsel, Tommy Meyer. You're gonna get the Vice President, Bryan Powers. We're available. We're available to all our clients. We talk to everybody. We really care. This is really important stuff for us. And so there's our contact information there. Please reach out to us if you have any questions at all. Maybe you don't want to use us. You just want to get some information about this field and whatnot. Call me. I don't care. I love this stuff. I'm very passionate about it. I love talking to people, and I love trying to help people. You know, and the other thing is there's always there's some kind of mystery out there, I think, in general, that we get mixed up, that we're involved somehow in putting out this negative content out there. And we've been involved in these kind of issues. Oh my God, we are not involved at all putting negative content out there. This is like crazy land. We're the solution to get your negative content off. Not only do we make money doing this, but what my passion is as an attorney is to actually change legislation. So you'll hear that there's some major legislation going on with newspapers. One of the things with newspapers, the Cleveland newspaper has what's called a right to be forgotten, which is similar to what's being done in the EU and Europe. And then, so they actually have an advisory board there that if you meet certain standards, that if you have an old story on their website, they will actually remove it. Even though they have the First Amendment right to keep it up, they have gotten to the point now, enough's enough. How long do you keep a negative story up about a person, you know? And they've come to the point like, okay, this is enough. We got to do something. And that's catching fire with newspapers across the country. One other huge piece of legislation is going on is the mugshot business. There are states now, particularly in the Northeast, and I think California will be moving in this direction too, where why in the world are we publishing mugshots when people get arrested by sheriff's departments? This is crazy. You're hearing it in the Black Lives Matter movement. You know, why are we publishing these mugshots? It makes no sense. We shouldn't be doing it. These people could be innocent. So there's a movement legislatively across the states to stop doing that. And guess what? I'm very supportive of that. Even though it hurts our bottom pocket, at the end of the day, we're passionate about this. We care. So we're very involved in these matters across the country. We'd love to help you out. If you need any help or anything, there's Bryan's number right there. You can contact him. My number is on, you can reach me out on LinkedIn. All my contact information is out there. And you can call me on my cell phone, text me, email me. Same for Bryan.
Tommy, you touched on a good point there. Is we are passionate about what we do, and there is a unique level of stress for individuals when the worst day of your life is on page one of Google. For lack of a better term, I compare it to a form of post-traumatic stress. We actually have a counselor we've worked with and sent a few clients to. There's a certain stress that we get it projected on us because some folks assume we control Google. But at the end of the day, we're here to help, listen, and act and fight on a client's behalf with Google every day, day in, day out, to try to clear that page and to restore some of that normalcy to their life. Because there's folks that no one was prepared for this when they grew up. I mean, you always heard about your permanent record, and Google's your new permanent record, for lack of a better term.
Yeah, I always say that you don't know you need us until you need us. People are like, wow, because you don't know that this information could be removed. All of a sudden you see this content out there. You're like, how do I remove it? And then you go, how do I remove, this publication? And people just don't know that there's an actual industry that can either suppress content or remove it.
Yeah. Well, I have some last, a lot of questions at the end funneling in, but unfortunately we're going to be tight on time. We won't be able to address them all given the short amount of time that we have left. Again, if you have any questions that we didn't get to during this webinar, feel free to reach us out to learn about how we can repair, restore, and improve your client's online reputation. Again, we appreciate your time and thank you for the panelists for your great expertise. I hope everyone has a great weekend.